The Mahabharata. Section LCI. Samhava Parva continued. Kanway continued, and Sakra, thus addressed by her, then commanded him, who could approach every place, viz., the god of the wind, to be present. With Menaka at the time she would be before the rishi. And the timid and beautiful Menaka then entered the retreat and saw there Visvamitra who had burnt, by his penances, all his sins, and was engaged still in ascetic penances. And saluting the rishi, she then began to sport before him. And just at that time Marut robbed her of her garments that were white as the moon. And she thereupon ran, as if in great bashfulness, to catch hold of her attire, and as if she was exceedingly annoyed with Marut. And she did all this before the very eyes of Visvamitra, who was endued with energy like that of fire. And Visvamitra saw her in that attitude. And beholding her divested of her robes, he saw that she was of faultless feature. And that best of Munis saw that she was exceedingly handsome, with no marks of age on her person. And beholding her beauty and accomplishments, that bull amongst rishis was possessed with lust, and made a sign that he desired her companionship. And he invited her accordingly, and she also of faultless features expressed her acceptance of the invitation. And they then passed a long time there in each other's company, and sporting with each other, just as they pleased, for a long time, as if it were only a single day. The rishi begot on Menaka a daughter named Sakantala. And Menaka, as her conception advanced, went to the banks of the river Malini, coursing along a valley of the charming mountains of Himavat. And there she gave birth to that daughter. And she left the newborn infant on the bank of that river and went away. And beholding the newborn infant lying in that forest destitute of human beings, but abounding with lions and tigers, a number of vultures sat around to protect it from harm. No rakshasas or carnivorous animals took its life. Those vultures protected the daughter of Menaka. I went there to perform my ablution, and beheld the infant lying in the solitude of the wilderness, surrounded by vultures. Bringing her hither, I have made her my daughter. Indeed, the maker of the body, the protector of life, the giver of food, are all three fathers in their order, according to the scriptures. And because she was surrounded in the solitude of the wilderness, by Sakantas, birds, therefore, hath she been named by me Sakantala, bird protected. O Brahman, learn that it is thus that Sakantala hath become my daughter. And the faultless Sakantala also regards me as her father. This is what my father had said unto the rishi, having been asked by him, O king of men, it is thus that thou must know I am the daughter of Kanway. And not knowing my real father, I regard Kanway as my father. Thus have I told thee, O king, all that hath been heard by me regarding my birth. Section LCA. Samhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana continued. King Dushmanta, hearing all this, said, Well spoken, O princess, this that thou hast said. Be my wife, O beautiful one. What shall I do for thee? Golden garlands, robes, earrings of gold, white and handsome pearls, from various countries, golden coins, finest carpets, I shall present thee this very day. Let the whole of my kingdom be thine today, O beautiful one. Come to me, O timid one, wedding me, O beautiful one, according to the Gandharv form. O thou of tapering thighs, of all forms of marriage, the Gandharv one is regarded as the first. Sakantala, hearing this, said, O king, my father hath gone away from this asylum to bring fruit. Wait but a moment, he will bestow me on thee. Dushmanta replied, O beautiful and faultless one, I desire that thou shouldst be my life's companion. Know thou that I exist for thee, and my heart is in thee. One is certainly one's own friend, and one certainly may depend upon one's own self. Therefore, according to the ordinance, thou canst certainly bestow thyself. There are, in all, 8 kinds of marriages. These are Brahma, Deva, Arsha, Prajapatya, Asura, Gandharv, Rakshasa, and Pasakha, the 8th. Manu, the son of the self-create, hath spoken of the appropriateness of all these forms according to their order. Know, O faultless one, that the first 4 of these are fit for Brahmanas, and the first 6 for Kshatriyas. As regards kings, even the Rakshasa form is permissible. The Asura form is permitted to Vaishyas and Sudras. Of the first 5 the 3 are proper, the other 2 being improper. The Pasakha and the Asura forms should never be practiced. These are the institutes of religion, and one should act according to them. The Gandharv and the Rakshasa form are consistent with the practices of Kshatriyas. Thou needst not entertain the least fear. There is not the least doubt that either according to any one of these last mentioned forms, or according to a union of both of them, our wedding may take place. O thou of the fairest complexion, full of desire, I am, thou also in a similar mood mayst become my wife according to the Gandharv form. Sakuntala, having listened to all this, answered, if this be the course sanctioned by religion, if, indeed, I am my own disposer, hear, O thou foremost one of Puru's race, what my terms are. Promise truly to give me what I ask thee. The son that shall be begotten on me shall become thy heir apparent. This, O king, is my fixed resolve. O Dushmanta, if thou grant this, then let our union take place. Vaisampayana continued, the monarch, without taking time to consider at once told her, let it be so. I will even take thee, O thou of agreeable smiles, with me to my capital. I tell thee truly, O beautiful one, thou deservest all this. And so saying, that first of kings wedded the handsome Sakuntala of graceful gait, and knew her as a husband. And, assuring her duly, he went away, telling her repeatedly, I shall send thee, for thy escort, my troops of 4 classes. Indeed, it is even thus that I shall take thee to my capital, O thou of sweet smiles. Vaisampayana continued, O Janamejaya, having promised so unto her, the king went away. And as he retraced his way homewards, he began to think of Kasyapa. And he asked himself, what will the illustrious ascetic say after he has known all? Thinking of this, he entered his capital. The moment the king had left, Kanwai arrived at his abode. But Sakuntala, from a sense of shame, did not go out to receive her father. That great ascetic, however, possessed of spiritual knowledge, knew all. Indeed, beholding everything with his spiritual eye, the illustrious one was pleased, and addressing her, said, Amiable one, what hath been done by thee today in secret, without having waited for me, viz., intercourse with a man hath not been destructive of thy virtue. Indeed, union, according to the Gandharv form, of a wishful woman with a man of sensual desire, without mantras of any kind, it is said, is the best for Kshatriyas. That best of men, Dushmanta, is also high-souled and virtuous. Thou hast, O Sakuntala, accepted him for thy husband. The son that shall be born of thee shall be mighty and illustrious in this world. And he shall have sway over the sea. And the forces of that illustrious King of kings, while he goeth out against his foes shall be irresistible. Sakuntala then approached her fatigued father and washed his feet. And, taking down the load he had with him and placing the fruits in proper order, she told him, It behoveth thee to give thy grace to that Dushmanta whom I have accepted for my husband, as well as his ministers. Kanway replied, O thou of the fairest complexion, for thy sake I am inclined to bless him. But receive from me, O blessed one, the boon that thou desirest. Vaisampayana continued, Sakuntala, thereupon, moved by desire of benefiting Dushmanta, asked the boon that the Parva monarchs might ever be virtuous and never deprived of their thrones. Section Lziv. Samhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, after Dushmanta had left the asylum having made those promises unto Sakuntala, the latter of tapering thighs brought forth a boy of immeasurable energy. And when the child was 3 years old, he became in splendor like the blazing fire. And, O Janame Jaya, he was possessed of beauty and magnanimity and every accomplishment. And that first of virtuous men, Kanway, caused all the rites of religion to be performed in respect of that intelligent child thriving day by day. And the boy gifted with pearly teeth and shining locks, capable of slaying lions even then, with all auspicious signs on his palm, and broad, expansive forehead, grew up in beauty and strength. And like unto a celestial child in splendor, he began to grow up rapidly. And when he was only 6 years of age, endued with great strength he used to seize and bind to the trees that stood around that asylum, lions and tigers and bears and buffaloes and elephants. And he rode on some animals, and pursued others in sportive mood. The dwellers at Kanway's asylum thereupon bestowed on him a name. And they said, because he seizes and restrains an animals however strong, let him be called Sarvedamana, the subduer of all. And it was thus that the boy came to be named Sarvedamana, endued as he was with prowess and energy and strength. And the Rishi, seeing the boy and marking also his extraordinary acts, told Sakuntala that the time had come for his installation as the heir apparent. And beholding the strength of the boy, Kanway commanded his disciples, saying, Bear yet without delay the Sakuntala with her son from this abode to that of her husband, blessed with every auspicious sign. Women should not live long in the houses of their paternal or maternal relations. Such residence is destructive of their reputation, their good conduct, their virtue. Therefore, delay not in bearing her hence. These disciples of the Rishi, thereupon, saying so be it, went towards the city named after an elephant, Hastinapura, with Sakuntala and her son ahead of them. And then she of fair eyebrows, taking with her that boy of celestial beauty, endued with eyes like lotus petals, left the woods where she had been first known by Dushmanta. And having approached the king, she with her boy resembling in splendor the rising sun was introduced to him. And the disciples of the Rishi having introduced her, returned to the asylum. And Sakuntala having worshipped the king according to proper form, told him, This is thy son, O king. Let him be installed as thy heir apparent. O king, this child, like unto a celestial, hath been begotten by thee upon me. Therefore, O best of men, fulfill now the promise thou gavest me. Call to mind, O thou of great good fortune, the agreement thou hadst made on the occasion of thy union with me in the asylum of Kanway. The king, hearing these her words, and remembering everything said, I Do not remember anything. Who art thou, O wicked woman in ascetic guise? I do not remember having any connection with thee in respect of Dharma, Kama and Arthas. Go or stay or do as thou pleasest. Thus addressed by him, the fair-colored innocent one became abashed. Grief deprived her of consciousness and she stood for a time like an wooden post. Soon, however, her eyes became red like copper and her lips began to quiver. And the glances she now and then cast upon the king seemed to burn the latter. Her rising wrath however, and the fire of her asceticism, she extinguished within herself by an extraordinary effort. Collecting her thoughts in a moment, her heart possessed with sorrow and rage, she thus addressed her lord in anger, looking at him, knowing everything, O monarch, how canst thou, like an inferior person, thus say that thou knowest it not? Thy heart is a witness to the truth or falsehood of this matter. Therefore, speak truly without degrading thyself. He who being one thing representeth himself as another thing to others, is like a thief and a robber of his own self. Of what sin is he not capable? Thou thinkest that thou alone hast knowledge of thy deed. But knowest thou not that the ancient, omniscient one, Narayana, liveth in thy heart? He knoweth all thy sins, and thou sinnest in his presence. He that sins thinks that none observes him. But he is observed by the gods and by him also who is in every heart. The sun, the moon, the air, the fire, the earth, the sky, water, the heart, Yama, the day, the night, both twilights, and Dharma, all witness the acts of man. Yama, the son of Surya, takes no account of the sins of him with whom Narayana the witness of all acts, is gratified. But he with whom Narayana is not gratified is tortured for his sins by Yama. Him who degradeth himself by representing his self falsely, the gods never bless. Even his own soul blesseth him not. I am a wife devoted to my husband. I have come of my own accord, it is true. But do not, on that account, treat me with disrespect. I am thy wife and, therefore, deserve to be treated respectfully. Wilt thou not treat me so, because I have come hither of my own accord? In the presence of so many, why dost thou treat me like an ordinary woman? I am not certainly crying in the wilderness. Dost thou not hear me? But if thou refuse to do what I supplicate thee for, O Dushmanta, thy head this moment shall burst into 100 pieces. The husband entering the womb of the wife cometh out himself in the form of the son. Therefore is the wife called by those cognizant of the Vedas as Jaya, she of whom one is born. And the son that is so born unto persons cognizant of the Vedic mantras rescueth the spirits of deceased ancestors. And because the son rescueth ancestors from the hell call put, therefore, hath he been called by the self create himself as Putra, the rescuer from put. By a son one conquereth the three worlds. By a son's son, one enjoyeth eternity. And by a grandson's son great-grandfathers enjoy everlasting happiness. She is a true wife who is skillful in household affairs. She is a true wife who hath borne a son. She is a true wife whose heart is devoted to her Lord. She is a true wife who knoweth none but her Lord. The wife is a man's half. The wife is the first of friends. The wife is the root of religion, profit, and desire. The wife is the root of salvation. They that have wives can perform religious acts. They that have wives can lead domestic lives. They that have wives have the means to be cheerful. They that have wives can achieve good fortune. Sweet-speeched wives are friends on occasions of joy. They are as fathers on occasions of religious acts. They are mothers in sickness and woe. Even in the deep woods to a traveler a wife is his refreshment and solace. He that hath a wife is trusted by all. A wife, therefore, is one's most valuable possession. Even when the husband leaving this world goeth into the region of Yama, it is the devoted wife that accompanies him thither. A wife going before waits for the husband. But if the husband goeth before, the chaste wife followeth close. For these reasons, O king, doth marriage exist. The husband enjoyed the companionship of the wife both in this and in the other worlds. It hath been said by learned persons that one is himself born as one's son. Therefore, a man whose wife hath borne a son should look upon her as his mother. Beholding the face of the son one hath begotten upon his wife, like his own face in a mirror, one feeleth as happy as a virtuous man, on attaining to heaven. Men scorched by mental grief, or suffering under bodily pain, feel as much refreshed in the companionship of their wives as a perspiring person in a cool bath. No man, even in anger, should ever do anything that is disagreeable to his wife, seeing that happiness, joy, and virtue everything dependeth on the wife. A wife is the sacred field in which the husband is born himself. Even rishis cannot create creatures without women. What happiness is greater than what the father feeleth when the son running towards him, even though his body be covered with dust, claspeth his limbs? Why then dost thou treat with indifference such a son, who hath approached thee himself and who casteth wistful glances towards thee for climbing thy knees? Even ants support their own eggs without destroying them. Then why shouldst not thou, a virtuous man that thou art, support thy own child? The touch of soft sandal paste, of women, of cool water, is not so agreeable as the touch of one's own infant son locked in one's embrace. As a Brahmana is the foremost of all Bhipts, a cow, the foremost of all quadrupeds, a protector, the foremost of all superiors, so is the son the foremost of all objects, agreeable to the touch. Let, therefore, this handsome child touch thee in embrace. There is nothing in the world more agreeable to the touch than the embrace of one's son. O chastiser of foes, I have brought forth this child, O monarch, capable of dispelling all thy sorrows after bearing him in my womb for full 3 years. O monarch of Puru's race, he shall perform 100 horse sacrifices. These were the words uttered from the sky when I was in the lying-in room. Indeed, men going into places remote from their homes take up their others' children on their laps and smelling their heads feel great happiness. Thou knowest that Brahmanas repeat these Vedic mantras on the occasion of the consecrating rites of infancy. Thou art born, O son, of my body. Thou art sprung from my heart. Thou art myself in the form of a son. Live thou to 100 years. My life dependeth on thee, and the continuation of my race also, on thee. Therefore, O son, live thou in great happiness to 100 years. He hath sprung from thy body, this second being from thee. Behold thyself in thy son, as thou beholdest thy image in the clear lake. As the sacrificial fire is kindled from the domestic one, so hath this one sprung from thee. Though one, thou hast divided thyself. In course of hunting while engaged in pursuit of the deer, I was approached by thee, O king, I who was then a virgin in the asylum of my father. Urvasi, Purvachitat, Sahaj Anya, Menaka, Viswaka, and Grataka, these are the 6 Foremost of Apsaras. Amongst them again, Menaka, born of Brahman, is the first. Descending from heaven on earth, after intercourse with Visvamitra, she gave birth to me. That celebrated Apsara, Menaka, brought me forth in a valley of Himavat. Bereft of all affection, she went away. Cast me there as if I were the child of somebody else. What sinful act did I do, of old, in some other life, that I was in infancy cast away by my parents, and at present am cast away by thee? Put away by thee, I am ready to return to the refuge of my father. But it behoveth thee not to cast off this child who is thy own. Hearing all this, Dushmanta said, O Sakantala, I do not know, having begot upon thee this son. Women generally speak untruths. Who shall believe in thy words? Destitute of all affection, the lewd Menaka is thy mother, and she cast thee off on the surface of the Himavat as one throws away, after the worship is over, the flowery offering made to his gods. Thy father too of the Kshatriya race, the lustful Visvamitra, who was tempted to become a Brahmana, is destitute of all affection. However, Menaka is the first of Apsaras, and thy father also is the first of Rishis. Being their daughter, why dost thou speak like a lewd woman? Thy words deserve no credit. Art thou not ashamed to speak them, especially before me? Go hence, O wicked woman in ascetic guise. Where is that foremost of great rishis, where also is that Apsara Menaka? And why art thou, low as thou art, in the guise of an ascetic? Thy child too is grown up. Thou sayest he is a boy, but he is very strong. How hath he soon grown like a sala sprout? Thy birth is low. Thou speakest like a lewd woman. Lustfully hast thou been begotten by Menaka. O woman of ascetic guise, all that thou sayest is quite unknown to me. I don't know thee. Go whithersoever thou choosest. Sakantala replied, Thou seest, O king, the fault of others, even though they be as small as a mustard seed. But seeing, thou noticest not thy own faults, even though they be as large as the vilway fruit. Menaka is one of the celestials. Indeed, Menaka is reckoned as the first of celestials. My birth, therefore, O Dushmanta, is far higher than thine. Thou walkest upon the earth, O king, but I roam in the skies. Behold, the difference between ourselves is as that between the mountain, Meru, and a mustard seed. Behold my power, O king. I can repair to the abodes of Indra, Kuvera, Yama, and Varuna. The saying is true which I shall refer to before thee, O sinless one. I refer to it for example's sake and not from evil motives. Therefore, it behoveth thee to pardon me after thou hast heard it. An ugly person considereth himself handsomer than others until he sees his own face in the mirror. But when he sees his own ugly face in the mirror, it is then that he perceiveth the difference between himself and others. He that is really handsome never taunts anybody. And he that always talketh evil becometh a reviler. And as the swine always look for dirt and filth even when in the midst of a flower garden, so the wicked always choose the evil out of both evil and good that others speak. Those, however, that are wise, on hearing the speeches of others that are intermixed with both good and evil, accept only what is good, like geese that always extract the milk only, though it be mixed with water. As the honest are always pained at speaking ill of others, so do the wicked always rejoice in doing the same thing. As the honest always feel pleasure in showing regard for the old, so do the wicked always take delight in aspersing the good. The honest are happy in not seeking for faults. The wicked are happy in seeking for them. The wicked ever speak ill of the honest. But the latter never injure the former, even if injured by them. What can be more ridiculous in the world than that those that are themselves wicked should represent the really honest as wicked? When even atheists are annoyed with those that have fallen off from truth and virtue and who are really like angry snakes of virulent poison, what shall I say of myself who am nurtured in faith? He that having begotten a son who is his own image, regardeth him not, never attaineth to the worlds he coveteth, and verily the gods destroy his good fortune and possessions. The Patris have said that the son continueth the race and the line and is, therefore, the best of all religious acts. Therefore, none should abandon a son. Manu hath said that there are 5 kinds of sons, those begotten by oneself upon his own wife, those obtained, as gift, from others, those purchased for a consideration, those reared with affection and those begotten upon other women than upon wedded wives. Sons support the religion and achievements of men, enhance their joys, and rescue deceased ancestors from hell. It behoveth thee not, therefore, O tiger among kings, to abandon a son who is such. Therefore, O Lord of earth, cherish thy own self, truth, and virtue by cherishing thy son. O lion among monarchs, it behoveth thee not to support this deceitfulness. The dedication of a tank is more meritorious than that of 100 wells. A sacrifice again is more meritorious than the dedication of a tank. A son is more meritorious than a sacrifice. Truth is more meritorious than 100 sons. 100 horse sacrifices had once been weighed against truth, and truth was found heavier than 100 horse sacrifices. O king, truth, I ween, may be equal to the study of the entire Vedas and ablutions in all holy places. There is no virtue equal to truth, there is nothing superior to truth. O king, truth is God himself, truth is the highest vow. Therefore, violate not thy pledge, O monarch. Let truth and thee be even united. If thou placest no credit in my words, I shall of my own accord go hence. Indeed, thy companionship should be avoided. But thou, O Dushmanta, that when thou art gone, this son of mine shall rule the whole earth surrounded by the 4 seas and adorned with the king of the mountains. Vaisampayana continued, Sakuntala having spoken to the monarch in this wise, left his presence. But as soon as she had left, a voice from the skies, emanating from no visible shape, thus spoke unto Dushmanta as he was sitting surrounded by his occasional and household priests, his preceptors, and ministers. And the voice said, the mother is but the sheath of flesh, the son sprung from the father is the father himself. Therefore, O Dushmanta, cherish thy son, and insult not Sakuntala. O best of men, the son, who is but a form of one's own seed, rescueth ancestors, from the region of Yama. Thou art the progenitor of this boy. Sakuntala hath spoken the truth. The husband, dividing his body in twain, is born of his wife in the form of son. Therefore, O Dushmanta, cherish, O monarch, thy son born of Sakuntala. To live by forsaking one's living son is a great misfortune. Therefore, O thou of Puru's race, cherish thy high-souled son born of Sakuntala, and because this child is to be cherished by thee even at our word, therefore shall this thy son be known by the name of Bharata, the cherished. Hearing these words uttered by the dwellers in heaven, the monarch of Puru's race became overjoyed and spoke as follows unto his priests and ministers, hear ye these words, uttered by the celestial messenger? I myself know this one to be my son. If I had taken him as my son on the strength of Sakuntala's words alone, my people would have been suspicious and my son also would not have been regarded as pure. Vaisampayana continued, the monarch, then, O thou of Bharata's race, seeing the purity of his son established by the celestial messenger, became exceedingly glad. And he took unto him that son with joy. And the king with a joyous heart then performed all those rites upon his son that a father should perform. And the king smelled his child's head and hugged him with affection. And the Brahmanas began to utter blessings upon him. And the bards began to applaud him. And the monarch then experienced the great delight that one feeleth at the touch of one's son. And Dushmanta also received Mat wife of his with affection. And he told her these words, pacifying her affectionately, O goddess, my union with thee took place privately, therefore, I was thinking of how best to establish thy purity. My people might think that we were only lustfully united and not as husband and wife, and therefore, this son that I would have installed as my heir apparent would only have been regarded as one of impure birth. And dearest, every hard word thou hast uttered in thy anger, have I, O large-eyed one, forgiven thee. Thou art my dearest. And the royal sage Dushmanta, having spoken thus unto his dear wife, O Bharata, received her with offerings of perfume, food, and drink. And King Dushmanta, then, bestowed the name of Bharata upon his child, and formally installed him as the heir apparent. And the famous and bright wheels of Bharata's car, invincible and like unto the wheels of the cars owned by the gods, traversed every region, filling the whole earth with their rattle. And the son of Dushmanta reduced to subjection all kings of the earth. And he ruled virtuously and earned great fame. And that monarch of great prowess was known by the titles of Chakravarti and Sarvabhauma. And he performed many sacrifices like Sakra, the lord of the Maruts. And Kanway was the chief priest at those sacrifices, in which the offerings to Brahmanas were great. And the blessed monarch performed both the cow and the horse sacrifices. And Bharata gave unto Kanway 1,000 gold coins as the sacerdotal fee. It is that Bharata from whom have emanated so many mighty achievements. It is from him that the great race called after him in his race are called after him. And in the Bharata race there have been born many godlike monarchs gifted with great energy, and like unto Brahman himself. Their number cannot be counted. But, O thou of Bharata's race, I shall name the principal ones that were blessed with great good fortune, like unto the gods, and devoted to truth and honesty. Section LXXV. Samhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, Hear now, as I recite the recorded genealogy, that is sacred and subservient to religion, profit, and pleasure, of these royal sages: Daksha, the lord of creation; Manu, the son of Surya; Bharata, Ruru, Puru, and Ajamidha. I shall also recite to thee, O sinless one, the genealogies of the Yadvas and of the Kurus and of the king of the Bharata line. These genealogies are sacred and their recitation is a great act of propitiation. That recitation conferreth wealth, fame and long life. And, O sinless one, all these I have named shone in their splendor and were equal unto the great rishis in energy. Prachetas had 10 sons who were all devoted to asceticism and possessed of every virtue. They burnt, of old, by the fire emanating from their mouths, several plants of poisonous and innumerable large trees that had covered the earth and became a source of great discomfort to man. After these 10, was born another named Daksha. It is from Daksha that all creatures have sprung. Therefore is he, O tiger among men, called the grandfather. Born of Prachetas the Muni Daksha, uniting himself with Virani, begot 1,000 sons of rigid vows, all like himself. And Narada taught these 1,000 sons of Daksha the excellent philosophy of Sankhya as a means of salvation. And, O Janamejaya, the Lord of creation, Daksha then, from the desire of making creatures, begot 50 daughters. And he made all of them his appointed daughters, so that their sons might be his sons also for the performance of all religious acts. And he bestowed 10 of his daughters on Dharma, and 13 on Kashyapa. And he gave 27 to Chandra, who are all engaged in indicating time. And Kashyapa, the son of Marishi, begot on the eldest of his 13 wives the Adityas, the celestials endued with great energy and having Indra as their head, and also Vivasvat, the son. And of Vivasvat was born the Lord Yama. And Mrthanda, Vivasvat, also begot another son after Yama, gifted with great intelligence and named Manu. And Manu was endued with great wisdom and devoted to virtue. And he became the progenitor of a line. And in Manu's race have been born all human beings, who have, therefore, been called Manavas. And it is of Manu that all men including Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and others have been descended, and are, therefore, all called Manavas. Subsequently, O monarch, the Brahmanas became united with the Kshatriyas. And those sons of Manu that were Brahmanas devoted themselves to the study of the Vedas. And Manu begot 10 other children, named Vina, Trishnu, Narishyan, Nabhaga, Ikshvaku, Karusha, Suryati, the 8th, a daughter named Ila, Prishatru the 9th, and Nabhagarishta the 10th. They all betook themselves to the practices of Kshatriyas. Besides these, Manu had 50 other sons on earth. But we heard that they all perished, quarreling with one another. The learned Pururavas was born of Ila. It hath been heard by us that Ila was both his mother and father. And the great Pururavas had sway over 13 islands of the sea. And, though a human being, he was always surrounded by companions that were superhuman. And Pururavas intoxicated with power quarreled with the Brahmanas, and little caring for their anger robbed them of their wealth. Beholding all this, Sanat Kumara came from the region of Brahman, and gave him good counsel, which was, however, rejected by Pururavas. Then the wrath of the great rishis was excited, and the avaricious monarch, who intoxicated with power, had lost his reason, was immediately destroyed by their curse. It was Pururavas who first brought from the region of the Gandharvas the 3 kinds of fire, for sacrificial purpose. And he brought thence the Apsara Urvasi also. And the son of Ila begot upon Urvasi 6 sons who were called Aus, Dhimat, Amavasu, and Dridaus, and Vinayus, and Sataos. And it is said that Aus begot 4 sons named Nahusha, Vridhasarman, Rajangaya, and Ananas, on the daughter of Swarbhanu. And, O monarch, Nahusha, of all the sons of Aus, being gifted with great intelligence and prowess, ruled his extensive kingdom virtuously. And King Nahusha supported evenly the Pitris, the celestials, the Rishis, the Brahmanas, the Gandharvas, the Nagas, the Rakshasas, the Kshatriyas, and the Vaishyas. And he suppressed all robber gangs with a mighty hand. But he made the rishis pay tribute and carry him on their backs like beasts of burden. And, conquering the very gods by the beauty of his person, his asceticism, prowess, and energy, he ruled as if he were Indra himself. And Nahusha begot 6 sons, all of sweet speech, named Yati, Yayati, Sanyati, Ayati, and Dhruva. Yati Beta king himself to asceticism became a Muni like unto Brahman himself. Yayati became a monarch of great prowess and virtue. He ruled the whole earth, performed numerous sacrifices, worshipped the Pitris with great reverence, and always respected the gods. And he brought the whole world under his sway and was never vanquished by any foe. And the sons of Yayati were all great bowmen and resplendent with every virtue. And, O king, they were begotten upon his 2 wives, Devyani and Sarmishtha. And of Devyani were born Yadu and Turvasu, and of Sarmishtha were born Drahayu, Anu, and Puru. And, O king, having virtuously ruled his subjects for a long time, Yayati was attacked with a hideous decrepitude, destroying his personal beauty. And attacked by decrepitude, the monarch then spoke, O Bharata, unto his sons Yadu and Puru and Turvasu and Drahayu and Anu these words, Ye dear sons, I wish to be a young man and to gratify my appetites in the company of young women. Do you help me therein? To him his eldest son born of Devyani then said, What needest thou, O king? Dost thou want to have your youth? Yayati then told him, Accept thou my decrepitude, O son. With thy youth I would enjoy myself. During the time of a great sacrifice I have been cursed by the Muni Usanas, Sakra. O son, I would enjoy myself with your youth. Take any of you this my decrepitude and with my body rule ye my kingdom. I would enjoy myself with a renovated body. Therefore, ye my sons, take ye my decrepitude. But none of his sons accepted his decrepitude. Then his youngest son Puru said unto him, O king, enjoy thyself thou once again with a renovated body and returned youth. I shall take thy decrepitude and at thy command rule thy kingdom. Thus addressed, the royal sage, by virtue of his ascetic power then transferred his own decrepitude unto that high-souled son of his, and with the youth of Puru became a youth, while with the monarch's age Puru ruled his kingdom. Then, after 1,000 years had passed away, Yayati, that tiger among kings, remained as strong and powerful as a tiger. And he enjoyed for a long time the companionship of his 2 wives. And in the gardens of Chitrarata, the king of Gandharvas, the king also enjoyed the company of the Apsara Viswaka. But even after all this, the great king found his appetites unsatiated. The king then recollected the following truths contained in the Puranas: truly, one's appetites are never satiated by enjoyment. On the other hand, like sacrificial butter poured into the fire, they flame up with indulgence. Even if one enjoyed the whole earth, with its wealth, diamonds, and gold, animals and women, one may not yet be satiated. It is only when man doth not commit any sin in respect of any living thing, in thought, deed, or speech, it is then that he attaineth to purity as that of Brahman. When one feareth nothing, when one is not feared by anything, when one wisheth for nothing, when one injureth nothing, it is then that one attaineth to the purity of Brahman. The wise monarch, seeing this and satisfied that one's appetites are never satiated, set his mind at rest by meditation, and took back from his son his own decrepitude, and giving him back his youth, though his own appetites were unsatiated, and installing him on the throne, he spoke unto Puru thus: Thou art my true heir, thou art my true son, by whom my race is to be continued. In the world shall my race be known by thy name. Vaisampayana continued, then that tiger among kings, having installed his son Puru on the throne, went away to the Mount of Bhrigu for devoting himself to asceticism. And, having acquired great ascetic merit, after long years, he succumbed to the inevitable influence of time. He left his human body by observing the vow of fasting, and ascended to heaven with his wives. Section Lxi. Sambhava Parva continued. Janamejaya said, O thou of the wealth of asceticism, tell me how our ancestor Yayati, who is the 10th from Prajapati, obtained for a wife the unobtainable daughter of Sakra. I desire to hear of it in detail. Tell me also, one after another, of those monarchs separately who were the founders of dynasties. Vaisampayana said, the monarch Yayati was in splendor like unto Indra himself. I will tell thee, in reply to thy question, O Janamejaya, how both Sakra and Vrishaparvan bestowed upon him, with due rights, their daughters, and how his union took place with Devyani in special. Between the celestials and the Asuras, there happened, of yore, frequent encounters for the sovereignty of the three worlds with everything in them. The gods, then, from desire of victory, installed the son of Angaras, Vrihaspati, as their priest to conduct their sacrifices, while their opponents installed the learned Usanas as their priest for the same purpose. And between those two Brahmanas there are always much boastful rivalry. Those Danavas assembled for encounter that were slain by the gods were all revived by the seer Sakra by the power of his knowledge. And then starting again, into life these fought with the gods. The Asuras also slew on the field of battle many of the celestials. But the open-minded Vrihaspati could not revive them, because he knew not the science called Sanjeevani, revivification, which Kavya endued with great energy knew so well. And the gods were, therefore, in great sorrow. And the gods, in great anxiety of heart and entertaining a fear of the learned Usanas, then went to Kaka, the eldest son of Vrihaspati, and spoke unto him, saying, We pay court to thee, be kind to us and do us a service that we regard as very great. That knowledge which resides in Sakra, that Brahmana of immeasurable prowess, make thy own as soon as thou canst. Thou shalt find the Brahmana in the court of Vrishaparvan. He always protects the Danavas but never us, their opponents. Thou art his junior in age, and, therefore, capable of adoring him with reverence. Thou canst also adore Devyani, the favorite daughter of that high-souled Brahmana. Indeed, thou alone art capable of propitiating them, both by worship. There is none else that can do so. By gratifying Devyani with thy conduct, liberality, sweetness, and general behavior, thou canst certainly obtain that knowledge. The son of Vrihaspati, thus solicited by the gods, said so be it, and went to where Vrishaparvan was. Kaka, thus sent by the gods, soon went to the capital of the chief of the Asuras, and beheld Sakra there. And beholding him, he thus spoke unto him, Accept me as thy disciple. I am the grandson of the Rishi Angaras and son of Vrihaspati. By name I am known as Kaka. Thyself becoming my preceptor, I shall practice the Brahmacharya mode of life for 1,000 years. Command me, then, O Brahmana. Sakra, hearing this, said, Welcome art thou, O Kaka. I accept thy speech. I will treat thee with regard, for by so doing, it is Vrihaspati who will be regarded. Vaisampayana continued, Kaka commanded by Kavya or Usanas himself, called also Sakra, then said, So be it, and took the vow he had spoken of. And, O Bharata, accepting the vow of which he had spoken, at the proper time, Kaka began to conciliate regardfully both his preceptor and his daughter, Devyani. Indeed, he began to conciliate both. And as he was young, by singing and dancing and playing on different kinds of instruments, he soon gratified Devyani, who was herself in her youth. And, O Bharata, with his whole heart set upon it, he soon gratified the maiden Devyani, who was then a young lady, by presents of flowers and fruits and services rendered with alacrity. And Devyani also with her songs and sweetness of manners used, while they were alone, to attend upon that youth carrying out his vow. And when 500 years had thus passed of Kaka's vow, the Danavas came to learn his intention. And, having no compunctions about slaying a Brahmana, they became very angry with him. And one day they saw Kaka in a solitary part of the woods, engaged in tending his preceptor's kine. They then slew Kaka from their hatred of Brihaspati and also from their desire of protecting the knowledge of reviving the dead from being conveyed by him. And having slain him, they hacked his body into pieces and gave them to be devoured by jackals and wolves. And, when twilight came, the kine returned to the fold without him who tended them. And Devyani, seeing the kine returned from the woods without Kaka, spoke, O Bharata, unto her father thus: Thy evening fire hath been kindled. The sun also hath set, O father. The kine have returned without him who tendeth them. Kaka is, indeed, not to be seen. It is plain that Kaka hath been lost, or is dead. Truly do I say, O father, that without him I will not live. Sakra hearing this said, I will revive him by saying, let this one come. Then having recourse to the science of reviving the dead, Sakra summoned Kaka. And summoned by his preceptor, Kaka appeared before him. In the gladness of heart tearing by virtue of his preceptor's science the bodies of the wolves, that had devoured him. And asked about the cause of his delay, he thus spoke unto Bhargava's daughter. Indeed, asked by that Brahman's daughter, he told her, I was dead. O thou of pure manners, burdened with sacrificial fuel, kusa grass, and logs of wood, I was coming towards our abode. I sat under a banyan tree. The kine also, having been brought together, were staying under the shade of that same banyan tree. The Asuras, beholding me, asked, Who art thou? They heard me answer, I am the son of Brihaspati. As soon as I said this, the Danavas slew me, and hacking my body into pieces gave my remains to jackals and wolves. And they then went home in the gladness of heart. O amiable one, summoned by the high-souled Bhargava, I after all come before thee fully revived. On another occasion, asked by Devyani, the Brahmanakaka went into the woods. And as he was roving about for gathering flowers, the Danavas beheld him. They again slew him, and pounding him into a paste they mixed it with the water of the ocean. Finding him long still, in coming, the maiden again represented the matter unto her father. And summoned again by the Brahmana with the aid of his science, Kaka appearing before his preceptor and his daughter told everything as it had happened. Then, slaying him for the third time and burning him and reducing him to ashes, the Asuras gave those ashes to the preceptor himself, mixing them with his wine. And Devyani again spoke unto her father, saying, O father, Kaka was sent to gather flowers. But he is not to be seen. It is plain. He hath been lost, or has died. I tell thee truly, I would not live without him. Sakra hearing this said, O daughter, the son of Brihaspati hath gone to the region of the dead. Though revived by my science, he is thus slain. frequently. What, indeed, am I to do? O Devyani, do not grieve, do not cry. One like thee should not grieve for one that is mortal. Thou art. Indeed, O daughter, in consequence of my prowess, worshipped thrice a day. During the ordained hours of prayer, by Brahmanas, the gods with Indra, the Vasus, the Aswins, the Asuras, in fact, by the whole universe. It is impossible to keep him alive, for revived by me he is often killed. 2. All this Devyani replied, why shall I, O father, not grieve for him? Whose grandfather is old Angaras himself, whose father is Vrihaspati, who is an ocean of ascetic merit, who is the grandson of a rishi and the son also of a rishi? He himself too was a brahmacharin and an ascetic, always wakeful and skilled in everything. I will starve and follow the way Kaka has gone. The handsome Kaka is, O father, dear unto me. Vaisampayana continued, the great Rishi Kavya, then, afflicted by what Devyani said, cried in anger, certainly, the Asuras seek to injure me. For they slay my disciple that stayeth with me. These followers of Rudra desire to divest me of my character as a Brahmana by making me participate in their crime. Truly, this crime hath a terrible end. The crime of slaying a Brahmana would even burn Indra himself. Having said this, the Brahmanasakra, urged by Devyani, began to summon Kaka who had entered the jaws of death. But Kaka, summoned with the aid of science, and afraid of the consequence to his preceptor, feebly replied from within the stomach of his preceptor, saying, be graceful unto me, O Lord. I am Kaka that worshipeth thee. Behave unto me as to thy own dearly loved son. Vaisampayana continued, Sakra then said, by what path, O Brahmana, hast thou entered my stomach, where thou stayest now? Leaving the Asuras. This very moment, I shall go over to the gods. Kaka replied, by thy grace, memory hath not failed me. Indeed, I do recollect everything as it hath happened. My ascetic virtues have not been destroyed. It is therefore, that I am able to bear this almost insufferable pain. O Kavya! Slain by the Asuras and burnt and reduced to powder, I have been given to thee with thy wine. When thou art present, O Brahmana, the art of the Asuras will never be able to vanquish the science of the Brahmana. Hearing this, Sakra said, O daughter, what good can I do to thee? It is with my death that Kaka can get his life back. O Devyani, Kaka is even within me. There is no other way of his coming out except by ripping open my stomach. Devyani replied, both evils shall, like fire, burn me. The death of Kaka and thy own death are to me the same. The death of Kaka would deprive me of life. If thou also deest, I shall not be able to bear my life. Then Sakra said, O son of Brihaspati, thou art, indeed, one already crowned with success, because Devyani regards thee so well. Accept the science that I will today impart to thee, if, indeed, thou be not Indra in the form of Kaka. None can come out of my stomach with life. A Brahmana, however, must not be slain, therefore, accept thou the science I impart to thee. Start thou into life as my son, and possessed of the knowledge received from me, and revived by me, take care that, on coming out of my body, thou dost act gracefully. Vaisampayana continued, receiving the science imparted to him by his preceptor the handsome Kaka, ripped open his stomach, came out like the moon at evening on the 15th day of the bright fortnight. And, beholding the remains of his preceptor lying like a heap of penances, Kaka revived him, aided by the science he had learned. Worshipping him with regard, Kaka said unto his preceptor, him who poureth the nectar of knowledge into one's ears, even as thou hast done into those of myself, who was void of knowledge, him do I regard both as my father and mother. And remembering the immense service done by him, who is there so ungrateful as to injure him? They that, having acquired knowledge, injure their preceptor who is always an object of worship, who is the giver of knowledge, who is the most precious of all precious objects on earth, come to be hated on earth and finally go to the regions of the sinful. Vaisampayana continued, the learned Sakra, having been deceived while under the influence of wine, and remembering the total loss of consciousness that is one of the terrible consequences of drink, and beholding too before him the handsome Kaka whom he had, in a state of unconsciousness, drunk with his wine, then thought of effecting a reform in the manners of Brahmanas. The high-souled Usanas rising up from the ground in anger, then spoke as follows, the wretched Brahmana who from this day, unable to resist the temptation, will drink wine shall be regarded as having lost his virtue, shall be reckoned to have committed the sin of slaying a Brahmana, shall be hated both in this and the other worlds. I set this limit to the conduct and dignity of Brahmanas everywhere. Let the honest, let Brahmanas, let those with regard for their superiors, let the gods, let the three worlds, listen. Having said these words, that high-souled one, that ascetic of ascetics, then summoning the Danavas who had been deprived by fate of the good sense, told them these words, Ye foolish Danavas, know ye that Kaka hath obtained his wishes. He will henceforth dwell with me. Having obtained the valuable knowledge of reviving the dead, that Brahmana hath, indeed, become in prowess even as Brahman himself. Vaisampayana continued, Bhargava having said so much cut short his speech. The Danavas were surprised and went away to their homes. Kaka, too, having stayed with his preceptor for a full 1,000 years, then prepared to return to the abode of the celestials, after having obtained his preceptor's permission. Section Lxi. Samhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, after the expiry of the period of his vow, Kaka, having obtained his preceptor's leave, was about to return to the abode of the celestials, when Devyani, addressing him, said, O grandson of the Rishi Angaras, in conduct and birth, in learning, asceticism and humility, thou shinest most brightly. As the celebrated Rishi Angaras is honored and regarded by my father, so is thy father regarded and worshipped by me. O thou of ascetic wealth, knowing this, listen to what I say. Recollect my conduct towards thee during the period of thy vow. Brahmakarya. Thy vow hath now been over. It behoveth thee to fix thy affections on me. O accept my hand duly with ordained mantras. Kaka replied, Thou art to me an object of regard and worship even as thy father. O thou of faultless features, thou art, indeed, even an object of greater reverence. Thou art dearer than life to the high-souled. Bhargava, O amiable one. As the daughter of my preceptor, thou art ever worthy of my worship. As my preceptor Sakra, thy father, is ever deserving of my regards, so art thou, O Devyani. Therefore, it behoveth thee not to say so. Hearing this, Devyani replied, Thou, too, art the son of my father's preceptor's son. Therefore, O best of Brahmanas, thou art deserving of my regards and worship. O Kaka, when thou wert slain so many times by the Asuras, recollect today the affection I showed for thee. Remembering my friendship and affection for thee, and, indeed, My devoted regard also, O virtuous one, it behoveth thee not to abandon me without any fault. I am truly devoted to thee. Hearing all this, Kaka said, O thou of virtuous vows, do not urge me into such a sinful course. O thou of fair eyebrows, be gracious unto me. Beautiful one, thou art to me an object of greater regard than my preceptor. Full of virtuous resolves, O large-eyed one, of face as handsome as moon, the place where thou hadst resided, viz., the body of Kavya, hath also been my abode. Thou art truly my sister. Amiable one. Happily have we passed the days that we have been together. There is perfect good understanding between us. I ask thy leave to return to my abode. Therefore, bless me so that my journey may be safe. I must be remembered by thee, when thou recallest me in connection with topics of conversation, as one that hath not transgressed virtue. Always attend upon my preceptor with readiness and singleness of heart. To all this, Devaniya answered, solicited by me, if, indeed, thou truly refusest to make me thy wife, then, O Kaka, this thy knowledge shall not bear fruit. Hearing this, Kaka said, I have refused thy request only because thou art the daughter of my preceptor, and not because thou hast any fault. Nor hath my preceptor in this respect issued any command. Curse me if it please thee. I have told thee what the behavior should be of a rishi. I do not deserve thy curse, O Devyani. But yet thou hast cursed me. Thou hast acted under the influence of passion and not from a sense of duty. Therefore, thy desire will not be fulfilled. No rishi's son shall ever accept thy hand in marriage. Thou hast said that my knowledge shall not bear fruit. Let it be so. But in respect of him it shall bear fruit to whom I may impart it. Vaisampayana continued, that first of Brahmanas, Kaka, having said so unto Devyani speedily wended his way unto the abode of the chief of the celestials. Beholding him arrived, the celestials with Indra ahead, having first worshipped him, spoke unto him as follows, Thou hast indeed performed an act of great benefit for us. Wonderful hath been thy achievement. Thy fame shall never die. Thou shalt be a sharer with us in sacrificial offerings. Section Lxviii. Samhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, the dwellers in heaven became exceedingly glad in welcoming Kaka who had mastered the wonderful science. And, O bull of Bharata's race, the celestials then learnt that science from Kaka and considered their object already achieved. And assembling together, they spoke unto him of 100 sacrifices, saying, the time hath come for showing prowess. Slay thy foes, O Purandara. And thus addressed. Maghavat, then accompanied by the celestials, set out, saying, so be it. But on his way he saw a number of damsels. These maidens were sporting in a lake in the gardens of the Gandharv Chitrarata. Changing himself into wind, he soon mixed up the garments of those maidens which they had laid on the bank. A little while after, the maidens, getting up from the water, approached their garments that had, indeed, got mixed up with one another. And it so happened that from the intermingled heap, the garments of Devyani were appropriated by Sarmishtha, the daughter of Vrishaparvan, from ignorance that it was not hers. And, O king, thereupon, between them, Devyani and Sarmishtha, then ensued a dispute. And Devyani said, O daughter of the Asura, chief, why dost thou take my attire, being, as thou art, my disciple? As thou art destitute of good behavior, nothing good can happen to thee. Sarmishtha, however, quickly replied, thy father occupying a lower seat, always adoreth with downcast looks, like a hired chanter of praises, my father, whether he sitteth at his ease or reclineth at full length. Thou art the daughter of one that chanteth the praises of others, of one that accepteth alms. I am the daughter of one who is adored, of one who bestoweth alms instead of ever accepting them. Beggar woman as thou art free to strike thy breast, to use ill words, to vow enmity to me, to give way to thy wrath. Accept res of alms, thou weepest tears of anger in vain. If so minded, I can harm thee, but thou canst not. Thou desirest to quarrel. But no. Thou that I do not reckon thee as my equal. Vaisampayana continued, hearing these words, Devyani became exceedingly angry and began to pull at her clothes. Sarmishtha thereupon threw her into a well and went home. Indeed, the wicked Sarmishtha, believing that Devyani was dead, bent her steps homewards in a wrathful mood. After Sarmishtha had left, Yayati the son of Nahusha soon came to that spot. The king had been out hunting. The couple of horses harnessed to his car and the other single horse with him were all fatigued. And the king himself was thirsty. And the son of Nahusha saw a well that was by. And he saw that it was dry. But in looking down into it, he saw a maiden, who in splendor was like a blazing fire. And beholding her within it, the blessed king addressed that girl of the complexion of the celestials, soothing her with sweet words. And he said, Who art thou, O fair one, of nails bright as burnished copper, and with earrings decked with celestial gems? Thou seemest to be greatly perturbed. Why dost thou weep? In affliction? How, indeed, hast thou fallen into this well covered with creepers and long grass? And, O slender-waisted girl, answer me truly. Whose daughter thou art? Devyani then replied, I am the daughter of Sakra who brings back into life the Asuras slain by the gods. He doth not know what hath befallen me. This is my right hand, O king, with nails bright as burnished copper. Thou art well born, I ask thee, to take and raise me up. I know thou art of good behavior, of great prowess, and of wide fame. It behoveth thee, therefore, to raise me from this well. Vaisampayana continued, King Yayati, learning that she was a Brahmana's daughter, raised her from that well by catching hold of her right hand. And the monarch promptly raising her from the pit and squinting to her tapering thighs, sweetly and courteously returned to his capital. When the son of Nahusha had gone away, Devyani of faultless features, afflicted with grief, then spoke unto her maid, Gurnika by name, who met her then. And she said, O Gurnika, go thou quickly and speak to my father without loss of time of everything as it hath happened. I shall not now enter the city of Vrishaparvan. Vaisampayana continued, Gurnika, thus commanded, repaired quickly to the mansion of the Asura chief, where she saw Kavya and spoke unto him, with her perception dimmed by anger. And she said, I tell thee, O great Brahmana, that Devyani hath been ill-used, O fortunate one, in the forest by Sarmishtha, the daughter of Vrishaparvan. And Kavya, hearing that his daughter had been ill-used by Sarmishtha, speedily went out with a heavy heart, seeking her in the woods. And when he found her in the woods, he clasped her with affection and spoke unto her with voice choked with grief, O daughter, the weal or woe that befalleth people is always due to their own faults. Thou hast therefore some fault, I ween, which hath been expiated thus. Hearing this, Devyani replied, Be it a penalty or not, listen to me with attention. O hear that all Sarmishtha, the daughter of Vrishaparvan, hath said unto me. Really hath she said that? Thou art only the higher chanter of the praises of the Asura king. Even thus hath she that Sarmishtha, Vrishaparvan's daughter spoken to me. With reddened eyes, these piercing and cruel words, thou art the daughter of one that ever chanteth for hire the praises of others, of one that asketh for charities, of one that accepteth alms, whereas I am the daughter of one that receiveth adorations, of one that giveth, of one that never accepteth anything as gift. These have been the words repeatedly spoken unto me by the proud Sarmishtha, the daughter of Vrishaparvan, with eyes red with anger. If, O father, I am really the daughter of a higher chanter of praises, of one that accepteth gifts, I must offer my adorations in the hope of obtaining her grace. Oh, of this I have already told her. Sakra replied, Thou art, O Devyani, no daughter of a hired adorer, of one that asketh for alms and accepteth gifts. Thou art the daughter of one that adores none, but of one that is adored by all. Vrishaparvan himself knoweth it, and Indra, and King Yayati too. That inconceivable Brahma, that unopposable Godhead, is my strength. The self-create himself, gratified by me, hath said that I am for I the Lord of that which is in all things on earth or in heaven. I tell thee truly that it is I who pour rain for the good of creatures and who nourish the annual plants that sustain all living things. Vaisampayana continued, it was by such sweet words of excellent import that the father endeavored to pacify his daughter afflicted with woe and oppressed by anger. Section 6. Samhava Parva continued. Sakra continued, Know, then, O Devyani, that he that mindeth not the evil speeches of others, conquereth everything. The wise say that he is a true charioteer who without slackening holdeth tightly the reins of his horses. He, therefore, is the true man that subdueth, without indulging in his rising wrath. Know thou, O Devyani, that by him is everything conquered, who calmly subdueth his rising anger. He is regarded as a man who by having recourse to forgiveness, shaketh off his rising anger like a snake casting off its slough. He that suppresseth his anger, he that regardeth not the evil speeches of others, he that becometh not angry, though there be cause, certainly acquireth the four objects for which we live, viz., virtue, profit, desire, and salvation, between him that performeth without fatigue sacrifices every month for 100 years, and him that never feeleth angry at anything, he that feeleth not wrath, is certainly the higher. Boys and girls, unable to distinguish between right and wrong, quarrel with each other. The wise never imitate them. Devyani, on hearing this speech of her father, said, O father, I know also what the difference is between anger and forgiveness as regards the power of each. But when a disciple behaveth disrespectfully, he should never be forgiven by the preceptor if the latter is really desirous of benefiting the former. Therefore, I do not desire to live any longer in a country where evil behavior is at a premium. The wise man desirous of good, should not dwell among those sinfully inclined men who always speak ill of good behavior and high birth. But there should one live indeed. That hath been said to be the best of dwelling places where good behavior and purity of birth are known and respected. The cruel words uttered by Vrishaparvan's daughter burn my heart even as men, desirous of kindling a fire, burn the dry fuel. I do not think anything more miserable for a man in the three worlds than to adore one's enemies. Blessed with good fortune, himself possessing none. It hath been indeed said by the learned that for such a man even death would be better Section LXXX. Sambhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, then Kavya, the foremost of Bhrigu's line, became angry himself, and approaching Vrishaparvan where the latter was seated, began to address him without weighing his words. O king, he said, sinful acts do not, like the earth, bear fruit immediately, but gradually and secretly do they extirpate their doers. Such fruit visiteth either in one's own self, one's son, or one's grandson. Sins must bear their fruit. Like rich food they can never be digested. And because yet slow the Brahmanakaka, the grandson of Angaras, who was virtuous, acquainted with the precepts of religion, and attentive to his duties, while residing in my abode, even for this act of slaughter and for the maltreatment of my daughter too, no, O Vrishaparvan, I shall leave thee and thy relatives. Indeed, O king, for this, I can no longer stay with thee. Dost thou, O Asura chief, think that I am a raving liar? Thou makest light of thy offense without seeking to correct it? Vrishaparvan then said, O son of Bhrigu, never have I attributed want of virtue, of falsehood, to thee. Indeed, virtue and truth ever dwell in thee. Be kind to me. O Bhargava, if, leaving us, thou really goest hence, we shall then go into the depths of the ocean. Indeed, there is nothing else for us to do. Sakra then replied, Ye Asuras, whether ye go into the depths of the ocean or fly away to all directions, I care little. I am unable to bear my daughter's grief. My daughter is ever dear to me. My life dependeth on her. Seek ye to please her. As Vrihaspati ever seeked the good of Indra, so do I always seek thine by my ascetic merits. Vrishaparvan then said, O Bhargava, thou art the absolute master of whatever is possessed by the Asura chiefs in this world, their elephants, kine and horses, and even my humble self. Sakra then answered, if it is true, O great Asura, that I am the lord of all the wealth of the Asuras, then go and gratify Devyani. Vaisampayana continued, when the great Kavya was so addressed by Vrishaparvan, he then went to Devyani and told her all. Devyani, however, quickly replied, O Bhargava, if thou art truly the lord of the Asura king himself and of all his wealth, then let the king himself come to me and say so in my presence. Vrishaparvan then approached Devyani and told her, O Devyani of sweet smiles, whatever thou desirest I am willing to give thee, however difficult it may be to grant the same. Devyani answered, I desire Sarmishtha with 1,000 maids to wait on me. She must also follow me to where my father may give me away. Vrishaparvan then commanded a maidservant in attendance on him, saying, Go and quickly bring Sarmishtha hither. Let her also accomplish what Devyani wisheth. Vaisampayana continued, the maidservant then repaired to Sarmishtha and told her, O amiable Sarmishtha, rise and follow me. Accomplish the good of thy relatives. Urged by Devyani, the Brahmana, Sakra, is on the point of leaving his disciples, the Asuras. O sinless one, thou must do what Devyani wisheth. Sarmishtha replied, I shall cheerfully do what Devyani wisheth. Urged by Devyani, Sakra is calling me. Both Sakra and Devyani must not leave the Asuras through my fault. Vaisampayana continued, commanded by her father, then, Sarmishtha, accompanied by 1,000 maidens, soon came, in a palanquin, out of her father's excellent mansion. And approaching Devyani she said, with my 1,000 maids, I am thy waiting maid. And I shall follow thee where thy father may give thee away. Devyani replied, I am the daughter of one Who chanteth the praises of thy father, and who beggeth and accepteth alms, thou, on the other hand, art the daughter of one who is adored. How canst thou be my waiting maid? Sarmishtha answered, one must by all means contribute to the happiness of one's afflicted relatives. Therefore shall I follow thee wherever thy father may give thee away. Vaisampayana continued, when Sarmishtha thus promised to be Devyani's waiting maid, the latter, O king, then spoke unto her father thus, O best of all excellent Brahmanas, I am gratified. I shall now enter the Asura capital. I now know that thy science and power of knowledge are not futile. Vaisampayana continued, that best of Brahmanas, of great reputation, thus addressed by his daughter, then, entered the Asura capital in the gladness of his heart. And the Danavas worshipped him with great reverence. Section Lxi. Samhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, after some length of time, O best of monarchs, Devyani of the fairest complexion went into the same woods for purposes of pleasure. And accompanied by Sarmishtha with her 1,000 maids, she reached the same spot and began to wander freely. And waited upon by all those companions, she felt supremely happy. And sporting with light hearts, they began drinking the honey in flowers, eating various kinds of fruit and biting some. And just at that time, King Yayati, the son of Nahusha, again came there tired and thirsty, in course of his wanderings, in search of deer. And the king saw Devyani and Sarmishtha, and those other maidens also, all decked with celestial ornaments and full of voluptuous languor in consequence of the flower honey they drank. And Devyani of sweet smiles, unrivaled for beauty and possessed of the fairest complexion amongst them all, was reclining at her ease. And she was waited upon by Sarmishtha, who was gently kneading her feet. And Yayati, seeing all this, said, O amiable ones, I would ask you both your names and parentage. It seems that these 2,000 maids wait on you too. Hearing the monarch, Devyani then answered, Listen to me, O best of men. Know that I am the daughter of Sakra, the spiritual guide of the Asuras. This my companion is my waiting maid. She attendeth on me wherever I go. She is Sarmishtha, the daughter of the Asura king Vrishaparvan. Yayati then asked, I am curious to know, why is this thy companion of fair eyebrows, this maiden of the fairest complexion, the daughter of the Asura chief, thy waiting maid? Devyani replied, O best of king, everything resulteth from fate. Knowing this also to be the result of fate, wonder not at it. Thy feature and attire are both like a king's. Thy speech also is fair and correct as that of the Vedas. Tell me thy name, whence thou art, and whose son also. The monarch replied, During my vow of Brahmacharya, the whole Vedas entered my ears. I am known as Yayati, a king's son, and myself a king. Devyani then inquired, O king, what hast thou come here for? Is it to gather lotuses, or to angle, or to hunt? Yayati said, O amiable one, thirsty from the pursuit of deer, I have come hither in search of water. I am very much fatigued. I await but your commands to leave this spot. Devyani answered, with my 2,000 damsels and my waiting maid Sarmishtha, I wait but your commands. Prosperity to thee. Be thou my friend and lord. Yayati, thereupon, replied, Beautiful one, I do not deserve thee. Thou art the daughter of Sakra, far superior to me. Thy father cannot bestow thee even on a great king. To this Devyani replied, Brahmanas had before this been united with the Kshatriyas, and Kshatriyas with Brahmanas. Thou art the son of a rishi and thyself a rishi. Therefore, O Son of Nahusha, marry me. Yayati, however, replied, O thou of the handsomest features, the four orders have, indeed, sprung from one body. But their duties and purity are not the same, the Brahmana being truly superior to all. Devyani answered, This hand of mine hath never been touched before by any man save thee. Therefore, do I accept thee for my Lord. How, indeed, shall any other man touch my hand which had before been touched by thyself who art a rishi? Yayati then said, The wise know that a Brahmana is more to be avoided than an angry snake of virulent poison, or a blazing fire of spreading flames. Devyani then told the monarch, O bull amongst men, why dost thou, indeed, say that Brahmana should be more avoided than an angry snake of virulent poison or a blazing fire of spreading flames? The monarch answered, The snake killeth only one. The sharpest weapon slayeth but a single person. The Brahmana, when angry, destroyeth whole cities and kingdoms. Therefore, O timid one, do I deem a Brahmana as more to be avoided than either. I cannot hence wed thee, O amiable one, unless thy father bestow it thee on me. Devyani then said, Thou art, indeed, chosen by me. And, O king, it is understood that thou wilt accept me if my father bestow it me on thee. Thou needst not fear to accept my poor self bestowed on thee. Thou dost not, indeed, ask for me. Vaisampayana continued, After this, Devyani quickly sent a maidservant to her father. The maid represented to Sakra everything as it had happened. And as soon as he had heard all, Bhargava came and saw Yayati. And beholding Bhargava come, Yayati worshipped and adored that Brahmana, and stood with joined palms in expectation of his commands. And Devyani then said, This, O father, is the son of Nahusha. He took hold of my hand, when I was in distress. I bow to thee. Bestow me upon him. I shall not wed any other person in the world. Sakra exclaimed, O thou of splendid courage, thou hast, indeed, been accepted as her lord by this my dear daughter. I bestow her on thee. Therefore, O son of Nahusha, accept her as thy wife. Yayati then said, I solicit the boon, O Brahmana, that by so doing, the sin of begetting a half-breed might not touch me. Sakra, however, assured him by saying, I shall absolve thee from the sin. Ask thou the boon that thou desirest. Fear not to wed her. I grant thee absolution. Maintain virtuously thy wife the slender-waisted Devyani. Transports of happiness be thine in her company. This other maiden, Vrishaparvan's daughter, Sarmishtha, should ever be regarded by thee. But thou shalt not summon her to thy bed. Vaisampayana continued, thus addressed by Sakra, Yayati then walked round the Brahmana, and the king then went through the auspicious ceremony of marriage according to the rites of the scriptures. And having received from Sakra this rich treasure of the excellent Devyani with Sarmishtha and those 2,000 maidens, and duly honored also by Sakra himself and the Asuras, the best of monarchs, then, commanded by the high-souled Bhargava, returned to his capital with a joyous heart. Section Lxi. Samhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, Yayati then, on returning to his capital, which was like unto the city of Indra, entered his inner apartments and established there his bride Devyani. And the monarch, directed by Devyani, established Vrishaparvan's daughter Sarmishtha in a mansion especially erected near the artificial woods of Asokas in his gardens. And the king surrounded Vrishaparvan's daughter Sarmishtha with 1,000 maids and honored her by making every arrangement for her food and garments. But It was with Devyani that the royal son of Nahusha sported like a celestial for many years in joy and bliss. And when her season came, the fair Devyani conceived. And she brought forth as her first child a fine boy. And when 1,000 years had passed away, Vrishaparvan's daughter Sarmishtha, having attained to puberty, saw that her season had come. She became anxious and said to herself, "My season hath arrived. But I have not yet chosen a husband. Oh, what hath happened? What should I do? How am I to obtain the fruition of my wishes? Devyani hath become mother. My youth is doomed to pass away in vain. Shall I choose him also for my husband whom Devyani hath chosen? This is, indeed, my resolve, that monarch should give me a son. Will not the virtuous one grant me a private interview?" Vaisampayana continued, while Sarmishtha was thus busy with her thoughts, the king wandering listlessly came to that very wood of Azokas. And beholding Sarmishtha before him, stood there in silence. Then Sarmishtha, of sweet smile, seeing the monarch before her with nobody to witness what might pass, approached him and said with joined palms, "O son of Nahusha, no one can behold the ladies that dwell in the inner apartments of Soma, of Indra, of Vishnu, of Yama, of Varuna, and of thee. Thou knowest, O king, that I am both handsome and well born. I solicit thee, O king. My season hath arrived. See that it goeth not in vain." Yayati answered, "Well do I know that honor of birth is thine, born as thou art in the proud race of the Danavas. Thou art also gifted with beauty. I do not, indeed, see even the speck of a fault in thy feature. But Usanas commanded me, while I was united with Devyani, that never should Vrishaparvan's daughter he summon to my bed." Sarmishtha then said, "It hath been said, O king, that it is not sinful to lie on the occasion of a joke, in respect of women sought to be enjoyed, on occasions of marriage, in peril of immediate death and of the loss of one's whole fortune. Lying is excusable on these 5 occasions. O king, it is not true that he is fallen who speaks not the truth when asked. Both Devyani and myself have been called hither as companions to serve the same purpose. When, therefore, thou hadst said that you wouldst confine thyself to one only amongst as, that was a lie thou hadst spoken." Yayati replied, "A king should ever be a model in the eyes of his people. That monarch certainly meets with destruction who speaks an untruth. As for myself, I dare not speak an untruth even if the greatest loss threatens me." Sarmishtha answered, "O monarch, one may look upon her friend's husband as her own. One's friend's marriage is the same as one's own. Thou hast been chosen by my friend as her husband. Thou art as much my husband, therefore." Yayati then said, "It is, indeed, my vow always to grant what one asketh. As thou askest me, tell me then what I am to do." Sarmishtha then said, "Absolve me, O king, from sin. Protect my virtue. Becoming a mother by thee, let me practice the highest virtue in this world. It is said, O king, that a wife, a slave, and a son can never earn wealth for themselves. What they earn always belongeth to him who owneth them. I am, indeed, the slave of Devyani. Thou art Devyani's master and lord. Thou art, therefore, O king, my master and lord as much as Devyani's. I solicit thee. Oh, fulfill my wishes." Vaisampayana continued, thus addressed by Sarmishtha, the monarch was persuaded into the truth of all she spoke. He therefore honored Sarmishtha by protecting her virtue. And they passed some time together. And taking affectionate farewell of each other, they then parted, each returning to whence he or she had come. And it came to pass that Sarmishtha of sweet smiles and fair eyebrows, conceived in consequence of that connection of hers with that best of monarchs. And, O king, that lotus-eyed lady then in due course of time brought forth a son of the splendor of a celestial child and of eyes like lotus petals. Section Lsksaith. Samhava Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, when Devyani of sweet smiles heard of the birth of this child, she became jealous, and O Bharata, Sarmishtha became an object of her unpleasant reflections. And Devyani, repairing to her, addressed her thus, O thou of fair eyebrows, what sin is this thou hast committed by yielding to the influence of lust? Sarmishtha replied, A certain rishi of virtuous soul and fully conversant with the Vedas came to me. Capable of granting boons, he was solicited by me to grant my wishes that were based on considerations of virtue. O thou of sweet smiles, I would not seek the sinful fulfillment of my desires. I tell thee truly that this child of mine is by that rishi. Devyani answered, It is all right if that be the case, O timid one. But if the lineage, name, and family of that Brahmana be known to thee, I should like to hear them. Sarmishtha replied, O thou of sweet smiles, in asceticism and energy, that rishi is resplendent like the sun himself. Beholding him, I had not any need to make these inquiries. Devyani then said, If this is true, if indeed thou hast obtained thy child from such a superior Brahmana, then, O Sarmishtha, I have no cause of anger. Vaisampayana continued, having thus talked and laughed with each other, they separated, Devyani returning to the palace with the knowledge imparted to her by Sarmishtha. And, O king, Yayati also begot on Devyani two sons called Yadu and Turvasu, who were like Indra and Vishnu. And Sarmishtha, the daughter of Vrishaparvan, became through the royal sage the mother of three sons in all, named Drahayu, Anu, and Puru. And, O king, it so came to pass that one day Devyani of sweet smiles, accompanied by Yayati, went into a solitary part of the woods, in the king's extensive park. And there she saw three children of celestial beauty playing with perfect trustfulness. And Devyani asked in surprise, Whose children are they, O king, who are so handsome and so like unto the children of the celestials? In splendor and beauty they are like thee, I should think. Vaisampayana continued, and Devyani, without waiting for a reply from the king, asked the children themselves, Ye children, what is your lineage? Who is your father? Answer me truly. I desire to know all. Those children then pointed at the king, with their forefingers, and spoke of Sarmishtha as their mother. And having so said, the children approached the king to clasp his knees. But the king dared not caress them in the presence of Devyani. The boys then left the place, and made towards their mother, weeping in grief. And the king, at this conduct of the boys, became very much abashed. But Devyani, marking the affection of the children for the king, learnt the secret, and addressing Sarmishtha, said, How hast thou dared to do me an injury, being, as thou art, dependent on me? Dost thou not fear to have recourse once more to that Asura custom of thine? Sarmishtha said, O thou of sweet smiles, all that I told thee of a rishi is perfectly true. I have acted rightly and according to the precepts of virtue, and therefore, do I not fear thee. When thou hadst chosen the king for thy husband, I, too, chose him as mine. O beautiful one, a friend's husband is, according to usage, one's own husband as Well, thou art the daughter of a Brahmana and, therefore, deservest my worship and regard. But dost thou not know that this royal sage is held by me in greater esteem still? Vaisampayana said. Devyani then, hearing those words of hers, exclaimed, O king, thus, thou hast wronged me, O monarch. I shall not live here any longer. And saying this, she quickly rose, with tearful eyes, to go to her father. And the king was grieved to see her thus, and, alarmed greatly, followed in her footsteps, endeavoring to appease her wrath. But Devyani, with eyes red with anger, would not desist. Speaking not a word to the king, with eyes bathed in tears, she soon reached the side of her father Usanas, the son of Kavi. And beholding her father, she stood before him, after due salutations. And Yayati also, immediately after, saluted and worshipped Bhargava. And Devyani said, O father, virtue hath been vanquished by vice. The low have risen, and the high have fallen. I have been offended again by Sarmishtha, the daughter of Vrishaparvan. 3 sons have been begotten upon her by this king Yayati. But, O father, being luckless I have got only 2 sons. O son of Bhrigu, this king is renowned for his knowledge of the precepts of religion. But, O Kavya, I tell thee that he hath deviated from the path of rectitude. Sakra, hearing all this, said, O monarch, since thou hast made vice thy beloved pursuit, though fully acquainted with the precepts of religion, invincible decrepitude shall paralyse thee. Yayati answered, Adorable 1, I was solicited by the daughter of the Danava king to fructify her season. I did it from a sense of virtue and not from other motives. That male person, who being solicited by a woman in her season doth not grant her wishes, is called, O Brahmana, by those conversant with the Vedas, a slayer of the embryo. He who, solicited in secret by a woman full of desire and in season, goeth not in unto her, loseth virtue and is called by the learned a killer of the embryo, O son of Bhrigu. For these reasons, and anxious to avoid sin, I went into Sarmishtha. Sakra then replied, Thou art dependent on me. Thou shouldst have awaited my command. Having acted falsely in the matter of thy duty, O son of Nahusha, thou hast been guilty of the sin of theft. Vaisampayana continued, Yayati, the son of Nahusha, thus cursed by the angry Usanas, was then divested of his youth and immediately overcome by decrepitude. And Yayati said, O son of Bhrigu, I have not yet been satiated with youth or with Devyani. Therefore, O Brahmana, be graceful unto me so that decrepitude might not touch me. Sakra then answered, I never speak an untruth. Even now, O king, art thou attacked by decrepitude. But if thou likest, thou art competent to transfer this thy decrepitude to another. Yayati said, O Brahmana, let it be commanded by thee that that son of mine who giveth me his youth shall enjoy my kingdom, and shall achieve both virtue and fame. Sakra replied, O son of Nahusha, thinking of me thou mayst transfer this thy decrepitude to whomsoever thou likest. That son who shall give thee his youth shall become thy successor to the throne. He shall also have long life, wide fame, and numerous progeny.